Good evening YouTube, Ian here at Coolice Charge Case and Power Supplies. I did promise you that once this case was finished that I was working on, I would obviously post another video. So I'm going to take this opportunity now to make another quick video and obviously show you the layout of the completed case that is in front of me. It is 99% done. I say 99% because there is just one more thing to do realistically, and that is for me to just create and apply the vinyl legends for the battery and balance board connection points. Not that they're necessarily needed, because obviously the SupraX connectors in this case are handed. So of course I've got the right gender to obviously sort out the polarity that way. But I always feel from a user's perspective, it's always handy to have the little legends on board as well. That way then there's no guessing. You know exactly which way you're going to connect the various connectors with no aggravation or anything. You know negative is on the left hand side and positive on the right, or vice versa, and everything else. It just saves messing around. So that's one last thing to do with the vinyl cutter, which I'll obviously pull out from the back of my workshop and obviously complete as well. But for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the camera around and obviously start going through the case with you. You'll be pleased to know there's no hairdryer this time. I'm just going to have the case running in the background, so you can obviously admire it from there hopefully. Please leave any comments, any suggestions you may have. I'm always looking to obviously improve my products as I go along. I have the tools. I'm learning more and more as I go along how to use them best to my advantage, so any and all input is always appreciated. Thank you for watching and thank you for looking, and I hope you like the case that I'm going to show you. Right, let me turn it round, and here it is. For those that have watched the video I posted about a little over a week ago now, you will have obviously seen the lid build, for example, which obviously has the OptiPower logo in it. That'll obviously glow as normal in a minute. When I turn it all on, at the moment it's obviously just sitting there. It's obviously connected with AC, but there's no power to it from the switch. So I'd like to just go obviously over the case now if I can. The bottom half of the deck is quite nice and simple. The customer didn't really want anything too fancy down here. Basically, he already had a charging board at home that he was using, which basically just had SupraX connectors on it, and then of course then the Revo Electrics charge boards, which can be daisy chained to one another, and indeed these are as well. On this side of the case you can just about see them potentially through the slots. We've got two PL8s there, so we've got one at the back, which is obviously then these ports then are in parallel to at the back here, so that's PL8 1 or channel 1 according to the bump, and then there's another PL8 here as well. I will have some pictures up on my website www.coolice.co.uk within the next few days, because I will update that with photographs of this build. So PL8 1, PL8 2, and again then PL8 2, then these connections on this half of the lower half of the deck here, they're obviously connected in parallel as well. So the plan is obviously the customer then can charge his 12 S packs, but obviously his two 6S packs, one here across the front here, and then another one then down the middle of the case, then connected to the row of connections there off the PowerLab 1. The eagle-eyed among you will obviously spot that I've got a couple of extra vent holes. In testing with this case, I found that the smaller fans that I fitted here, which are 50-15 radial fans, didn't shift enough air. They just weren't really good enough. So I have left those in, because any and all cooling is better than nothing. So in all my case builds, I always prefer to have the fans pulling warm air out of the case, and then obviously then I have the air slots then to let ambient air in. So basically in this case, because the power labs are here, the power supplies then occupy this space in the bottom of the deck, the air comes in through here, passes over the PL8s, cooling them in the process, coming across the power supplies, gets ingested by the power supplies, and then of course in this case thrown out the back, to which then I have added larger radial fans. These ones are 70-30 or 75-30, and the way it's worked out, I'm actually really pleased, because I've got one HP DPS 1200 FP power supply here and another one here, and their cooling fans are basically just in line with these radial fans here. So as the air goes in through the front of the power supply and is then pulled out the back by their own integral 40mm fans, it literally just gets thrown straight into these big 70-30 radials and then up, out and out of the case. So they actually keep very, very cool now when these are running. They're surprisingly, they're not that loud either. I was expecting them to be quite loud. They're not, which is good, because obviously if you're in the same room next to this case when it's charging, you certainly don't want to be overrun by cooling fans. So it'll be quite good for you to hear it as well, but they work out quite well. Obviously I machined then the openings into those. I then machined a recess and then a 3D printed little frame that then inserts into that recess, which then clamps the mesh grill that I purchased. It was silver. I've just quickly sprayed it black and obviously then cut a small rectangle then, which obviously sits into the recess in the bottom of the deck. And then the little 3D printed, which I can grab one, show you, and then the little 3D printed frame holder. I've got one here which I made. It was slightly too thick in the end. I had to reduce the thickness by about 1mm. So that then obviously then they got one of those behind each one of those grills that is holding the metal grill in place. I've beveled the edge as well so that I can turn my light on so you can see it. I've beveled the edge as well so that as the fan then goes into that, it then obviously directs the air through the opening as well quite nicely. So that sits in there under the grill and acts as like a little guide vane as well. Turn the light back on. We'll leave the light back on for now. Shows a little bit more. Excuse me. You can obviously see there the SupraX connector. And again, for this, I've created a 3D printed holder for that. So the holder then is obviously recessed through the deck, and then obviously secured to the underside of the deck. Obviously with blind, I've got M5 inserts there which are blind into the 10mm polypropylene deck. So there's no visual screws on top of the deck, which is quite nice. The only ones that will be here will be the deck securing screws themselves, which obviously secure the deck plate to the tangs moulded into the case, which is good. So of course that doesn't flap around in transit. But they worked out quite nice. I've used a similar process before on other cases, so it was just a case of designing one then to suit the SupraX connectors again. And just to be on the safe side for now, I do have an adapter here because I don't use SupraX myself. I have not glued them in yet, so if I put that in I can just pull them out, as you can see. So when I pass the case over to the customer, I can pull that up a little bit further. There. So before I pass the case to the customer, obviously I can just double check to make sure I have got the right connectors here and the right way round, and then obviously then just put a little bit of glue on and then push it back down into place, and then it'll be sat in there for the remainder of its life. So that's the main thing. Obviously the Revo Electrics, I don't know what they call them, but they're the XH charge boards that can be daisy chained to one another. I modified those. I desoldered the JST XH connector from one side and then resoldered it onto the other side so it faces upwards, and then obviously the little PCB behind here has been recessed into the deck behind it, so it kind of sits just, actually it's sub flush, it's just sub flush by about 0.5mm, but it's basically flush with the deck, so that looks quite nice and neat. And then of course then the carbon skin then is obviously trimmed by hand once it's applied, so it just fits nice. The other notable thing about this, which is different to any other case I've seen, is I did want to try a cable chain, a plastic cable chain. It's a flexible chain. It's more commonly found on CNC routers and machines that constantly move around with wires going to the moving parts. So basically the wires are poked through this chain, and it basically acts as obviously a flexible protection for them essentially. So I wanted to try this in a case, so I 3D printed a holder at the top end so it's fixed within the lid, but then as I open and close the lid, you can see obviously the cable chain then goes into the lower half of the case and back out. obviously to start with, it's all well and good having an idea, but if it doesn't work in practice, then it's obviously no good. But touch wood, this has worked really, really well. So it is something I will potentially carry over to any of my future case builds that need, obviously, wires going up into the lid build. Because it just makes it quite neat, actually. Keeps everything safe and out the way. It's not having to, you're not having to poke the wire down through a hole, through a puny little hole in the deck, which then obviously over time then creates stress points or whatever. It works out quite nice. I'm quite pleased with how that's worked out. And the overall with this case, while the lid itself is the flashy part, if you like, with the opening and the OptiPower logo, which will glow when obviously I power it up. The idea was to keep it quite tasteful. I haven't weighed it yet, admittedly. It's quite a heavy case, I will add. It's certainly going to be no lightweight case, so it's not going to be one of those grab and go off the cuff cases. That's not what this case is about. This is about being functional, being powerful as well. Again, it's got the usual HP 2400 watt 25 volt power supplies in there, so there's plenty of power in there for the two PL8s, and obviously a good overhead as well, so you're not going to be stressing those out too much, which is nice. But let me stop talking for a minute. Let me put the AC on. See what, I'll turn the light off. Obviously this unit, not that it was strictly needed here, but it's always handy to have. It's got my ice meter protection circuit there, obviously monitoring the power supplies, and of course then that controls the LED strip, which I have sunk into the top half of the lid here. So as amp draw increases past the programmable point, which I think in this case I've set to 1 amp, I could do with going a little bit higher, because cooling fans are pulling, combined with the 4 cooling fans, you're looking at about 0.8 of an amp there, so it's just on the cusp of changing colour just via the fans alone. But it obviously gives a nice halo effect, which you saw on the previous video. So let's flick it on. The ice meter is obviously starting. It's very difficult to get this LCD, and there we go. This is where the light helps. There you go, and you can see it. So basically the ice meter is now up and running. The case is powered, and so too are the power supplies inside, but they're not turned on yet. So while they're on, they're basically in, I think what would be a best word to use is standby mode, and they will be until such time as I press the go button on the ice meter, which of course starts and stops the protection programming, and in this case starts everything else. So the eagle-eyed among you will obviously spot the Revo Electrics bump controller taking pride of place there in the middle. Again, if I turn the light on, there we go. The phone camera doesn't like it. There we go. And as you can see, actually, the way the LED light, the lighting is, obviously I've got the groove for the LED strip. It's about 10-15 mm in from the outer edge of the lid plate, if you want to call it that, and then obviously machined with the router about 6 mm deep. So basically the LED strip is, or should I say the LED diodes are sunk into the polypropylene deck, which is obviously a clear, or is actually a natural milky white sort of colour. But while it doesn't transmit light quite as well as acrylic, surprisingly it does transfer light well. Hence the effect I was going for, if I turn the light off again, is the halo effect. As you can see all the way around now, which is what I was hoping for, and it's worked out quite nice. The LEDs that are controlled by the ice meter then give this nice halo effect to the case. So it works quite well. When you look at it, it stands out, it looks good, and everything else. Obviously then, again, very difficult with the artificial light in here, and then obviously the camera phone but you can see the OptiPower logo, which is obviously again routed, painted, routed again to give you the colours in the lid of the storage. And again, it's on a popper, so if I click it and it opens, you can see here originally this groove, I put that in there because originally I was going to have an acrylic logo which was lit by a line of LEDs across the bottom, which is what I've done in the past, but I changed my mind. That that didn't shine this logo up very well. The way this logo is done, it just didn't work out quite well. It actually needed to be backlit. So then you can see obviously the LEDs I've mounted actually inside the pocket itself. So when the lid is closed, it of course shines the back of the lid, and of course then that's how come then we've got the white, because I've used white LEDs, that's how come we've got the little white border all the way around the door, which was the thin, give or take, millimetre clearance between the opening door and the frame itself. So we've got the ice meter as normal, doing its job in the bottom left hand corner. Oh, that's another thing, I need to just do the little legend plate in there just to cover up the little hole, the little mounting hole at the back, and obviously give some a little bit extra protection to the screen. Bump controller in the middle. We'll turn the desk light fan on, so of course we can see that working, works well. And we've got the usual twin USB sockets there, and then just to be different, to give options there, we've got a cigarette lighter socket as well, so there's the option then to run other car orientated chargers of some description on it. You can probably hear the fans are running. They give a very good airflow actually out of them. I'm really pleased with them. That will keep that lower half, where the main area of the case, nice and cool, which is great. Obviously being a UK based case, it's not exactly going to swelter 99% of the time of the year, unfortunately. We normally heavy rain in the UK most times, but we do have the nice odd sunny day, so that'll be quite nice and reassuring that the case itself can keep itself cool. And that's about it. We'll just keep doing a little bit more testing, although these power supplies have already proven themselves, because they have been used already, or they have already been in use. So they were once just used as a standalone power supply, they're now also being used in this case build. And we're quite pleased. I'm quite pleased with that. I think the customer will be very pleased, it'll work out well. He'll exercise his arm, admittedly, carrying this to and from the field potentially, because again it's no lightweight. But it looks pretty, it's going to be functional, and I'm proud to have my name behind it. Appreciate you watching. Thanks for looking, and please come back and see my next case builds. Thank you very much. Bye bye.